Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where in the world you are connecting from. We'll give one more minute to get started because we have a lot of people connecting today. So some people have their camera on. Feel free to turn on your camera. This will be more an interactive session rather than a webinar. So we're happy to see your faces as well if your internet connection allows. Please turn the camera on. Feel free to say your greetings on the chat as well. Share where in the world you are connecting from. Welcome. Oh, I see already some greetings from Pakistan. Okay. Wonderful. Well, we have 50 people already. We'll give just one more minute. We had nearly 300 people registered. Let's see how many show up. Like global group, people from the Philippines, the US, Hong Kong, Canada, Chile, India. Oh, wow. Pretty good representation from the Philippines, and should be late in the evening for you. Thank you for joining us and making the time. So we're going to get started. Those who come in late will join us as they come. So thank you so much, everyone. Welcome to today's session on how can educators cultivate global citizenship values. Just a few Zoom reminders as we get started. We all might be familiar with Zoom, but we just wanted to quickly share with you how we'll be using Zoom throughout this session. First, we invite you to rename yourself. You can go on the participants list and click next to your name on rename. We invite you, as you were sharing your greetings with us from where you are connecting from, if you want to put your name, your country, and if you want to, your organization as well, feel free to add that. We also invite you, as I was mentioning, as you were coming in, to turn your video on if your internet connection allows. We'll keep you muted while we are presenting, but we will have some breakout room activity, group discussion. So we invite you, even if you don't want to in the main session, but to activate your camera and make sure your audio is working so you can interact in the breakout room. If not, we always have the option of the chat as well. Feel free to share your comments and questions on the chat. We also have a reactions function in Zoom, so feel free to use that to engage with the content as well. As many of us are connecting from different parts of the world, and this session is in English, and most of us are non-native English speakers, we're also happy to share with you that closed captions are available, so you can enable that as well. You should be able to see that on your Zoom options. You see the caption function, and you can click there, you choose speaking language English, and then you can choose the caption also on the language that best works for you. One last reminder, we do not allow AI note-taking apps throughout this session, so I've seen some requests pop up for AI companions. Unfortunately, we don't enable that, but we will be sharing with you the recording from this session and also the slides, so don't worry about it. You have access to all the content, so you can look back as well. So with that, I just wanted to say a few words from the organizers of this workshop and quickly introduce myself. My name is Ana Carolina. I work with AFS, and I just want to share again a warm welcome and thank you for joining this session. For those of you who are familiar with AFS, AFS is a global nonprofit organization that works. Our main goal is to develop active global citizens, as we say, and we do that through various types of international education programs, but also through education resources, volunteering, and advocacy. And one of the activities we do, we've been doing that for the past 4 years, is this webinar series that we host during International Education Week. And this workshop today is part of that. And we are very pleased to welcome as our speaker today and leading this workshop, Dr. Anat Bardi, who is a professor of psychology at Royal Holloway, University of London. Anat's research really focuses on the personal and cultural values, their change, and how strongly they are expressed in behavior. She has recent research on value development at school and during high school international education programs, or pupil mobility, as it is called in Europe. Her research has been cited in over 12,000 times, and she has highly cited papers that impact research within and outside psychology as well, and especially in practice like ours in international education. She has been working with practitioners to really apply the values knowledge to practice, and mainly in education, which is one of the reasons we've been collaborating with her, and one of the topics she'll be introducing to us today through this interactive workshop. She currently has funding to develop digital and interactive materials for practitioners to help them use some of the knowledge of this research. And we are lucky to benefit from this. Our collaboration has led to this workshop and also some online modules for our global virtual programs for educators. And she's also available to collaborate with others until July 2026. So if you're interested, we'll share her contact at the end of the session as well. Feel free to reach out as well. And Anat, with that, I'll hand over to you so you can introduce us to today's topics.
Thank you, Carol. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Does everybody hear me well? Can I have some? Yeah, okay, brilliant. It's really wonderful to be here and to talk with you about how educators can cultivate global citizenship values. It's wonderful to see so many people from so many different countries. It's really and truly global event, truly international event. My hope for this session today is that it'll help you think about values and how they work, and how you can act as educators to encourage the values that you really want to encourage rather than some undesirable values. So my hope is that this webinar, whatever happens in this webinar, will not end with this webinar, but that it will stay with you, and it will stay with you to your practice, to your day-to-day later on. But we want to actually start with behaviors. So what I'd like to ask you is to download the activity sheet here. So you can click, I see that the activity sheet is already on the chat. So please download it. And it has, as you can see on the slide, it has just a very simple list of behaviors, very mundane, everyday behaviors. And you simply have to tick yes or no. And if you have trouble downloading, maybe just take a picture with your camera of the screen so that you have the list of behaviors. And if you're not school teachers, but you're a different type of educator, then anything that says classroom or something like this, just try to think about the equivalent space where you act and try to answer it based on your equivalent space. So we'll wait a couple of minutes, and Carol, I'll let you say when it's good to move on.
Yeah, just maybe if people can just give us a reaction, let them know that they were able to download the activity sheet, just comment on the chat, download it, or thumbs up.
Yeah, and I just want to say we will use your responses later on in the breakout rooms. We will work with this sheet, so please do the activity, or at least think about it.
It should be working. Raphael says able to download it, and I see some thumbs up as well. Anat, would you want to give them just 1 minute to look through the statements? And for those joining us now, we just got started. We're doing an activity where you reflect on your behaviors in your education setting. So you should be able to see the QR code. And I'll ask Claudia just to pop again the link on the chat because we have some people who have just joined us so they can download it as well.
Great to see the reactions.
With that, I think we can move forward, Anat.
Okay. So the next thing that I'd like to do is for you to think about what are the most important things to you? What are your most important values as an educator? And here you have a link a link to menti.com. So if you go to menti.com or download it, or I don't know, Carol, if you're going to, oh, you did have the Menti there. Okay, great. So the Menti link is also on the chat. And if you go there, you have to put in a code, the numbers on the screen, and put in what are your most important values as an educator. And it can be more than one. So you can have several entries. Okay, so great. We're starting to see what people have put in. And if you see values that maybe you haven't thought about, but actually they are important to you, then please feel free to write them too. So we're already seeing some big ones. So the ones that are big are ones that the more people kind of enter these values, the bigger the word is on the screen. And we see empathy as a very big value, one that's shared by many people. Honesty, respect, responsibility, adaptability. So you will see soon that empathy and responsibility kind of belong to the same broad value, and respect depend on what respect you mean, but if you mean respect for other cultures or people who are different to us, that will belong to a similar value to the one that has empathy and kindness. And critical thinking is not that far from there. Kindness, it's, yeah, part of empathy. Great. I think we can move on. We have enough. So you know what you put in. This enabled you to think a little bit about what's important, what's most important to you as educators. So please do remember those as well. And now I can move the slides myself, right, Carol? Okay, great.
Yes.
So, we're talking about values. Why should you care about it? Why should educators care about values? Well, obviously, I'm a values researcher. I think that you should. And you should care about them because values are this very core element of us that affects many other things. And you can think about values, the effect of values, it's the same way that you think about an effect of when you throw a little stone to the water and you have this ripple effect where the values that are the most core affect many goals. And so each value you put in kindness affects different goals of kindness, affects many more attitudes, and affects many more behaviors. So even if it's just one value, let's think about kindness, it has a large effect. Many behaviors can express the value of kindness. And we have seen that in research that when values are very important, when they're highly important, they affect behaviors very, very well. So people for whom a value is highly important act according to this value a lot, and also act according to it well into the future. So if we measure values now and we predict that value in a year from now, in 2 years from now, we see the effect in people who have this value as a very strong value, highly important to them. So this should tell you as educators that it is worthwhile to invest in trying to impact young people to have particular values and not others. So what are values? So values are what's important to us in our lives. And you can think about them as broad goals, like life goals. So you can think about kindness as something that's important to you, and you put in there empathy. Empathy is something is important to you, and it's important to you for a very long time. And if it's this, so there are these really general things, general principles, and if they're general, then chances are they live across situations. They're stable across situations. So if kindness is important to you at home with your family, it's likely important to you also with your friends, with your coworkers. Even in public, on the train, in the bus, somebody needs help, you might want to help them if you value kindness. And if it's if it's stable across situations, it's likely to also be stable across time. And this is what is found. So values are generally in adulthood, they are really quite stable. And so if kindness is important to you today, chances are it's going to be important to you a year from now, 2 years from now, and for the rest of your life, which again means that young people are still changing more. So you can have an effect on them now that will last for a very long time. An important feature of values is that values are socially positive. So this isn't like attitudes, goals. They can be negative socially. Values are socially positive. There is an element of ideology in values. So killing, for example, will never be a value. It can be a behavior. It could be a goal. You might have an attitude pro-killing, but it will never be the value. And if you think about terrorists, and you might think, okay, well, but surely for them, killing is the value. Chances are the killing itself is not the value. The value might be tradition values. They kill for some reasons that have to do with tradition or religion. It may be that they kill out of reasons of security and safety. These are values. It can be values of power, values of dominance, which are still legitimate, and the act is an act of killing. But the values are always at least somewhat socially positive. And another thing that's unique to values, in contrast to goals and to attitudes, is that they're organized in these personal hierarchies where each value will be more or less important than another value. So the values are always living us in a system. And this varies by individuals. So for some people, fairness might be more important than having wealth. For others, being wealthy, having a lot of money is more important than being fair. And this location in the value personal hierarchy is what then determines how we see situations and how we behave. So in every situation will be relevant to more than one value, and it's kind of a matter of which one is more important to you. So what are the values out there and how do they relate to one another? So I'm going to talk about everything that I'll talk about from now on is within a framework developed by Shalom Schwartz, who found that values are organized in a particular value structure. And you see it on the slide. And in this structure, neighboring values like self-direction and stimulation here our neighboring values work together. They tend to co-occur in people. So someone who values highly self-direction, chances are they also value highly stimulation. And they work together, they predict similar behaviors. And values that are in opposite side of the circle, so if you think about self-direction and think about conservation, conformity, tradition, security, are values that tend to be conflicting. And so, and they will drive people to opposite behaviors. And so usually people don't value opposite values both highly. And let me give you an example of how this works. So let's say that you value conformity. And let's say that someone who is superior to you, your boss maybe, your parent, asks you to do something that you object to. What are your options here? You either comply with this request, and by complying, you fulfill values of conformity, or you don't comply in whatever way, and in this way, you will express values of self-direction, values of independent thinking and action. By conforming, you can express values of conformity, and you can also express value of security at the same act. So security and conformity usually will lead you to the same behavior. The same behavior expresses both values. But by complying, you necessarily violate principles of freedom of thinking, of independent thinking, principles of self-direction values. And so usually because of this, the thinking is that because of this, people don't tend to hold opposite values with great importance. So if we're thinking of conformity and security, they're part of conservation values. So because these values, the neighboring values work well together, we can group them into bigger groups. And so one larger group is conservation values. Conservation values, people who have these values want the world to remain as it is. They don't want to see much change. And this can be in terms of the traditions that existed before them and will continue to exist after them. It means that they would want to fulfill others' expectations and conformity values, and it means that they would want the world to be secure, their personal security, but also their national security and family security. And these values are conflicting to values of openness to change. Values of openness to change are about being open to new things, new ideas, new actions. So it's new ideas in self-direction values, and it includes values of curiosity and creativity and being independent, both in thinking and in acting. And it can also be openness to change in terms of having exciting life, having adventures. And hedonism values can also belong to openness to change. So hedonism is about having fun and having pleasure. Hedonism values can also belong to this group, self-enhancement values. In self-enhancement values, the motivation is to promote yourself even at the expense of others. So it can be in terms of power, having resources, having a lot of money to buy things, or having power over other people, telling people what to do, having prestige and social status. It can also be in terms of achievement, of achieving something that is considered good in society. So this isn't about having understanding or things like that, but about having rewards that are considered important in society. Like for students, it would be high grades, or it can be a high salary. So things that are considered in society, just understanding something well is not achievement. It is an expression of self-direction. So these values of self-enhancement are conflicting to values of self-transcendence. Values of self-transcendence are values where the person you transcend your selfish interests in order to help other people, in order to promote other people, in order to help other people. And it can be close people in your immediate surrounding in benevolence values that include helpfulness, and you mentioned earlier kindness, empathy. These are all values of benevolence. And it could be in terms of promoting and protecting people outside your immediate group in universalism values. So this includes values of social justice and equality. And people mentioned respect a lot. If I'm assuming that it's respect to other people who are different from me and other cultures, then that's also part of universalism. And when we think about global citizenship, if we think about global citizenship values, these are also part of universalism values. So global citizenship is about wanting to do good in the world, to the world. So not necessarily people that I know personally, not necessarily people that belong to my group or my country, but other people. Promote peace, help the weak in society, and it can be in other societies as well, help with poverty, and so on. Universalism is also about promoting and protecting nature. So anything to do with nature protection will also be part of universalism. And this circle of relations has been found very, very robustly, empirically around the world, from value questionnaires of people all over the world, any type of occupation, and even young people. So even as young as 6-year-olds show this structure. So we know that this structure is very, very strong. It's very robust. And at this point, now I told you about the value structure, which we will work with throughout this webinar. So I would like to check if there's anything that people don't understand, then it's a good point to just clarify anything that might have not been understood. So if you have any questions just about this, please, I guess, write in the chat or ask. I don't know, Carol, it's okay to raise their hands and ask, yeah? All right, great. So if everyone feels like they understand, where do integrity and authenticity fit? The integrity and authenticity, I would say, fit within self-direction. So self-direction is about having my own understanding, own thinking, and being true to myself. So independence in thought and action. Okay, so now you can think back at your the values that you put in on the Menti, and also the behaviors. The behaviors, each of the behaviors is a reflection of a value. And you can think about your behaviors as an educator and just think to yourself, do they actually fit my values? And we'll go back to this later. But you can just have this in your mind as we go on. So where do values come from? So values come from our culture, and we have such a diversity of culture which is amazing. And chances are, with different cultures, there's diversity here in the room, also in values. Values come very much from our family, and they come from our family both in terms of our genes, so there is a genetic component to value, but also from our childhood experiences. And if you think about childhood experiences, school is a place where children spend a lot of time, a lot of their waking hours. And so educators in school have something to do with the experiences that children have. They have some impact on what experiences children have. And through that, they can have an impact on the values that they develop. And of course, educators outside of school as well. So how can educators affect value development? So the most obvious thing is to talk to students about the values. But what we know is that you have to be really careful with that. And this can actually backfire. People usually don't like to be lectured about values. And so that might not work well, especially if the teacher does not behave according to the values that they preach. So if you think about it, if a teacher says, I treat everyone the same way, I favor equality. But the children see very clearly that this teacher has clear favorites. Some children the teacher likes more than others. Then all the children learn is that it's important to say that equality is important to you, but it's not important at all to act according to this. So lecturing is not always the best way. And what is found in research very consistently is the most effective way in which values change is through the environment. Children adjust, and adults as well, adjust to what is encouraged in the environment and what is not blocked in the environment. So how does that happen? It happens through the different environments of schools, for example. So it's been found that schools where grades are very, very important, we've put a lot of emphasis on grades. In these schools, children develop more values of self-enhancement. Schools where helpfulness is very important, the children end up developing values of self-transcendence, the kindness values. Schools where curiosity and creativity are encouraged, children end up developing more values of openness to change. So the environment matters, and also educators can have different messages that can help, that will change values, that will end up with value development. And this value development happens according to the circle. So here, before I move on, I need to show you two important features of the circle. One is what is called the bleed over effect. Because the neighboring values, they work together, any behavior that relates to one value will tend to be also somewhat related to a neighboring value. So for example, if you think about volunteering as a behavior, by volunteering, you can fulfill both universalism and benevolence values. And if benevolence values are encouraged, then chances are universalism values will also be encouraged. And similarly, values that are opposite to one another have opposite effects. And when one is encouraged, the opposite value is likely discouraged. So when power values are encouraged, universalism values are discouraged. And here's an example from something that can happen at school. So if you think about encouraging children to win, so telling them, go out there and win and make sure you win. If it's a very, very important goal for you that the children will win, then what do you encourage with that? You end up encouraging power values of status. And when you encourage power values, you end up discouraging universalism values of fairness. And in this also global citizenship values. So if you think about it, in a competition, there is only one winner. Everybody else is a loser. And if you really want to win, it doesn't make sense to play fair. It makes sense to cheat. It doesn't make sense to help people from the opposite side. And so with an atmosphere that has a really strong emphasis on winning, you end up discouraging universalism values that maybe you didn't mean to discourage. But then you may ask me, okay, so what can you do? We want the children to be motivated. So how can they be motivated? Well, here, a possible solution is to change in a very slight way, the messaging. Instead of encouraging children to win, encouraging them to excel and to master challenges. And excelling and mastering challenges is an expression of self-direction. And self-direction is not opposite to universalism values. It's a neighbor of universalism values. So if you encourage them to do your personal best, be the best runner that you can be, and so on, then you encourage self-direction values, which are neighboring to universalism values and may support an increase in universalism values, which also include global citizenship values. Let's take and here you can also think about having a star for Star of the Week. So we have people from many different cultures, and I live in the UK, and in the UK it's very common to have a Star of the Week. But if Star of the Week is a very prestigious status, then it likely encourages power and achievement values. It likely encourages self-enhancement values. So it's something to think about. So I gave you one example of messaging from one dimension of opposites of values, and here's another one. So a very common situation, the teacher says, quiet. And let's say that the teacher says it lots and lots of times, and it's a recurrent behavior. What is the message here? It's a message to children to value conformity. You need to conform now, but actually I'm telling you this again and again and again. So it's a message of encouraging conformity. And with the encouragement of conformity, a side effect of that is likely to be a discouraging of self-direction values. And self-direction values that's what learning is all about, is thinking for yourself, being independent in the end, drawing conclusion, have critical thinking, which was actually in the first in the Menti as a value that people here. There were quite a few people who put that in. So critical thinking is part of self-direction, and so it is possible that teachers don't mean to discourage curiosity and creativity. They just need the children to be quiet now, and you do need that. So what can you do instead? So instead, an alternative message can be quiet so we can all learn. This takes the quiet and moves it from being a value to being a goal. Now, being quiet is a goal that serves learning, and learning is all about self-direction values. It's an expression of self-direction value. So suddenly you move with a very slight change of messaging, of phrasing, you move from encouraging conformity to encouraging self-direction, which is neighboring to universalism values and global citizenship values. And a similar example with the similar values is the message of do as you're told. So this can happen in lots of different ways. So it can be that as a teacher you give the student a task, and you want them and you show them how to do the task in a very particular way. It can be even a math problems, but there is a student that doesn't want to do it this way. They want to do it in a different way. Or it can be that a student, you want them to, we're now in an art session and we're doing dolls, and the student wants to do houses. So you tell them, you give them a message that they need to be told, they need to do as they're told. But now you already understand that this encourages, especially if it comes again and again, it encourages conformity values. So what can you do? And this discourages openness to change values, and maybe you don't want that. So what could be an alternative? So can people pop in some alternative suggestions in the chat? What else can you do? It will depend on the context, of course. Any ideas? Oh, okay, great. So attach it to a goal. Why that way? I'm not actually sure I understand. I think I need a few more words for that. Or if you want to talk. celebrate uniqueness. So you can say, okay, it's actually, that's great. You want to do houses instead of dolls? Yeah, sure, why not? Um, and then we have another one. I like it, but let's try it like this. So yeah, in this way, when you say I like it, but let's try it this way, you acknowledge that it's not a bad thing to have your own idea. It's a good thing. I don't want to block that, but I just want everyone to try it now first this way. And you could say, well, maybe later we could do it in a different way, or maybe you could do it at home in a different way. Yeah, really. Yeah, we have here someone saying, oh, is there a reason to do it that way? If not, then yes, let's celebrate it. Again, very dependent on, yeah, so it's very dependent on the context, obviously. But I think, um, yeah, yeah. So somebody said trying doing the in a way I suggest to learn a different way. Yeah, so that's a really great way to address this is to say, okay, let's try it this way. And this actually already encourages being open-minded, so this is also part of self-direction values. Let's be open-minded, just try it this way, and maybe later we can try it in a different way. Um, Okay, so that's great. I'm going to stop with this here because we need to move on, but it's great that you already thought about some ways in which you can tackle this without necessarily encouraging conformity values. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to the activity that you did before, the DUA activity, and we have an explanation sheet for you to download that explains what are the values that are that these particular behaviors express. And so if you can download them, yes, so I see it now in the chat. And then what we're going to do is you're going to work in breakout rooms. And in the breakout rooms, what I'd like you to do is just look at the list of behaviors. And if there is a behavior that pops up for you, maybe it's something you do, but now you realize it's actually expressing a value that you don't necessarily want to encourage in your students, then then just discuss what could be an alternative way in which you end up not encouraging values you don't want to encourage. And what we're going to do is, and if you can have one member of the group, then being prepared to bring it back to the main room. We're going to have overall 10 minutes for the whole thing. We have helpers here, so myself and 6 more student helpers who are very well versed with the values and some with an education background as well. Will go around the groups just to support you in case you need help. So I think we can turn into the breakout rooms now.
I'll open the breakout room shortly, Anat. Just a quick note for you and the student helpers. We reduced the number of breakout rooms, so we would have at least 3 people in each. So just so you know, the ones we had assigned for you, you'll be helping instead of 1 to 5, 1 to 4, and that way forwards, okay? So it's one less group for each of you. So just make sure that you count on your head, otherwise the last one won't be in any breakout room. And for everyone here, we'll open the breakout rooms. You will be joined automatically. As Anat mentioned, we have set up for 10 minutes the breakout rooms. And once the rooms close, you still have 30 seconds to wrap up your discussions before you are returned to the main session. I'm also going to ask Claudia just to pop the instructions for the group discussion in the chat as well. So you can consult that when you go into your breakout rooms and look back at the questions that we're asking you to discuss. And if you have any questions as well, feel free to reach out. Claudia and I will be here in the main session if you have any issues joining the breakout rooms. So we'll open the rooms now and participants will be moved automatically. Helpers, you need to open and click on the room you need to go.
Yeah, and let me just say, if something is unclear, do ask the helper that's coming into your breakout room. So would anyone like to share with us what you talked about and what ideas you had?
Can I start? Or
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Heather, everyone. And I'm starting now because I need to leave in a few minutes, unfortunately. But I was in a room with Pratibha, and we talked about shifting the language. So just in the first question or the first statement of telling students to be quiet, I was kind of relating this to parenting. It's much more meaningful when it's kind of becomes when we're focusing on something that can be intrinsic in oneself, right? So telling my child not to run instead of just saying don't run, really focusing on maybe what I want to see is, walking because so that you don't get hurt. You know what I mean? So kind of attaching that to like something else for the learning. I don't know if that relates and if that shifts it entirely. But yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Because then it's not a value. If values usually don't have explanations attached to them. Values are kind of all or none, just quiet or just don't run. Once you have an explanation, then the explanation will give the value to it. So I need you to stay safe. Don't run so that we keep you safe. That's already not necessarily conformity, but it's something else. So yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. Yeah, can we have Andrew maybe?
Yeah, hi. I was in a group with Sarita and Rowan, and we also discussed about shifting language, but also establishing a presence in the school. So we actually only got through the first statement. We had a great discussion, just first of all, where everyone's from and what's happening behind us on Zoom. But yeah, we talked about asking or telling students to be quiet, and there was discussion about even just our body language and standing silently to get attention. And there's a little bit of discussion is what that conveys to the entire group, not just to those that we're hoping will change their behavior. And then we also talked about having different tools in our tool belt type thing. And so at certain points, or it's in certain situations, how different tools might be necessary. So if there's an emergency, then perhaps we have to say, to be quiet. There's a lockdown. But again, that shifts language. And also saying others are waiting. So kind of putting the ownership, that their behavior is affecting the entire group. I'm not sure what you think about that.
Yeah, it's great. And that's actually encouraging benevolence, right? So you want to be considerate of other people. Yeah, and you're absolutely right that posture in and of itself can convey messages. So that's another way. Yeah.
I saw Nidhi had her hand up as well. Nidhi, you want to share as well?
Yeah, I'll try. We were in a room where I think some people had internet issues, and still I could talk to Ali Akbar. And so we talked about praising students in the class, whereas it says that you encourage working together, it builds universalism. At the same time, you discourage power. So if you try to shift the focus also, yet I feel it leads to self-transcendence, because it's a very necessary value in the society. So shifting statements could be, it's great to help each other so that we can all come up with more solutions, more and achieve better together.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
That's great. Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, Carol, I don't know. It's up to you if we carry on.
Yeah, we have time for if any one or two more groups want to share back.
I can go. It's Lynn. Sorry, I couldn't figure out where to put my hand up. So Renante and I were in a group together, and we kind of took a different path, in part because neither of us work directly with really young kids. We either work with young adults or adults. And so still feeling that all of this messaging is important. Are there any suggestions or things that might be different if you're working with young people or even older adults that already have established values? Are there any tips and tricks or direction that would be helpful in addition to modeling, obviously, these, the same practices, but is there anything in addition?
Well, we actually find the same processes along the lifespan. So it's not like young adults, anything's different with them. And so I think it's really the same. It's just that you might talk in a more sophisticated language, you might be able to explain more, but everything else is quite the same, really. Older people tend to change less in general than younger people. But certainly young adults still change a lot. In their 20s, there's a lot of change. What we haven't found in adults is we haven't found that changing behavior leads to value change. It may be that it's there, but we haven't found it yet. But anything to do with explanations to why things are done in a particular way should work in the same way, I would say.
Now, may I add?
Yeah, go ahead.
If you allow the students to understand that the onus of learning is not only one way, that is the teacher's job, it is the learner's job, and it is, are you ready to take charge of yourself? That is creating environment to imbibe learning. So are you ready to listen to what is being said by your peers or your teachers? I think that feeling, when it comes, you don't have to say, keep quiet.
Mm-hmm.
The onus has to be realized by the learner, and that onus automatically changes. And it is how a teacher creates that situation in the class will determine how many students are ready to take the onus.
Yeah, so basically putting the responsibility back on the students, this also encourages them to be their own person, which is part of self-direction values, actually, is to have their own, their integrity and be their own agent, being independent thinkers, but just open to learning something new. Yeah, great. So I guess we move on, Carol.
Yes.
Okay. So what do we find? What do we see in research that does seem to affect value change and development? So specific things that we see is we see clues that modeling matters. So when people behave in the way that they would like to encourage the values in young people, we see that being followed up by an increase in those behaviors. So basically, if you model kindness, chances are students later on will develop values of kindness. So modeling seems to be very important. And then I talked earlier about the environment that encourages certain values. So, for example, acknowledging the personal best of a student. So not the best, who's best in the class necessarily, but working towards personal best, working towards improvement. That encourages self-direction. bear in mind that when grades become incredibly important, that encourages power and achievement. And of course, it's very difficult for schools because they do need to encourage the high grades. It depends where you are. But for example, in the UK, schools are being measured on student success. So there is a lot of pressure from the environment to emphasize grades. But I would say teachers can also kind of tame that, just make it a little bit smaller. And then if you praise for things like kindness, it's likely to encourage benevolence values. Okay, it's universal. I guess you meant, I get a comment, it's universal. I guess you mean the pressure on schools. Making students feel confident matters too. So we have found in our studies, in multiple studies, that when adolescents have increased in their self-esteem, so they've increased in their confidence, they later on developed self-direction values. And it seems like if you think, it kind of makes sense if you think about if you want people to be independent and curious and pursue their own interests, they need to feel confident. So as educators, you can help them feel confident. And another feeling that we found that made a difference was worrying. That when people worried, so this was in adults actually, in the pandemic, those who worried more developed more values of conservation. So these are adults, these are not children anymore. And the environment does affect people's values even outside of the education system. But as educators, you can affect how children feel, how young people feel. And another thing that's important is to think about behavior. So what has been found in multiple studies now, multiple ages and multiple countries, is that we see that while children and young adults, adolescents develop, we see that values are then followed by the behaviors that express them. So those who develop kindness values later on show more and more kindness behaviors. But the opposite direction happens too. So behaviors, when children increase in the frequency of a particular behavior, let's say kindness, later on they develop these values. And as educators, you have a very strong effect on the behaviors of young people. And you can do that, for example, through projects. So, for example, if you do projects of collaboration between one country and another country. So let's say you have a project in which you have students from your class work with students in another country, and they do some project online together. So this is a behavior that is up to you to encourage. Also volunteering. Some schools have volunteering programs that are embedded into the school. And this way you encourage behavior, which what we see in research suggests that chances are the values will come to, they will follow the behavior. And if we think about the universality of values, that's something to learn from as well. So we have found that there is something very universal, not just in the structure of the values, but also in how important values are in the hierarchy, the average hierarchy of values. And around the world, we find that very consistently, power values tend to be the least important all over the world, like most places in the world, on average. Most important values tend to be benevolence values. Second in importance tend to be self-direction values. And third in importance tend to be universalism values. So this is good news because these are already the values that chances are you might want to encourage. And the reason it's a good news because students are not likely to object to this if they're already values that are considered important. And finally, when we think about global citizenship values and behavior, through high school study abroad programs, we've seen in our research together with AFS, we've seen that what happens, at least in AFS, is that students who apply to go on a study abroad program already value universalism very highly. So these are values that have to do with global citizenship. And so the values don't increase further. They already have them. There's no more room to grow. But what we do see is there's an effect on behaviors. So we see that those who come back from a study abroad program tend to show more global citizenship behaviors like volunteering and like promoting global causes, like causes that have to do with peace and reducing poverty. And they also tend to collaborate more with people on this. So it seems like there is an increase in global citizenship behavior and collaboration on this behavior. We've seen that following the study abroad program, adolescents or the youth that come back, they're more resilient in these behaviors. So even if something goes wrong, if there's obstacles to their behavior, they carry on and persist in them. And we see that they're also more confident in working with the host country and the host country's language after they went for 1 year compared to those who went for a shorter program. So it does seem like there's good benefits to these programs. So with this, I end this. We have plenty of resources in the website that you see there, the Velis website. There's lots of resources for teachers and advice, and you can also link up with me in LinkedIn by scanning the QR code or just and also contact me. So thank you very much for your attention and for your participation.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much, Anat. We still have quite a few minutes. We do want to leave some minutes at the end to share some opportunities and reminders from AFS with you. But before, we do have some times for questions, comments. So feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself. So you can clarify any questions, share your own impressions and experiences as an educator in different settings, fostering these values and encouraging these behaviors. And I also I see we have a lot of AFS representatives as well. Your insights on especially what relates to how we can foster these behaviors through study abroad programs. Maybe you want to share your input and insight as a practitioner as well. I see Beth has her hand up.
Yeah, actually, if I could just add, just to remind what Carol had said earlier, that we still have funding to create online materials, just like the ones on the website that I put there. And so organizations that work with values and would like us to create materials for you, the students, helpers in this today have been creating great material, and we're happy to create bespoke material for people. So yeah, I'd love to hear from Beth, please.
Thank you, Dr. Bardi. This was amazing. My brain is very stimulated thinking about my learner group, which are adult learners. They are healthcare professionals, so physicians, speech language pathologists, pharmacists, etc. And I think about the dehumanizing environment that is healthcare, at least in the United States right now, and how that may be, the forced behaviors are sort of shaping values, perhaps in ways that we don't want to see. But so my question, however, is about something you mentioned, that there's a genetic component to values. And I've never heard that before. And I know if I share this with my scientist groups, they'll want to know more. So could you share a little more about that, please?
Yes. So this was found comparing identical twins with non-identical twins. So the way that they differ from one another is their genes. They both, identical twins and non-identical twins, grow up in the same family. And so they largely have the same environment. And there is a substantial component of values in genetics found this way. And what is also very interesting is that the genetic effect becomes stronger in early adulthood compared to childhood. Which I think is, on first thought, is counterintuitive, because you think that if there's something genetic, you should see it in the beginning of life, not later on when in older adolescence. But this was actually found not just for values, but also for personality, that the genetics show themselves more later on in life. And the explanation is that when children are still young, their parents make a lot of choices for them. So they decide what schools they go to, they have a say in what clubs they go to, their social environment, and so on. And only later, when they grow up, the older they are, the more they have their own choices to make. And what is found is that people make choices that align with their genetics. So it's like the genetics have a possibility and an opportunity to show up more. But by the way, the findings with genetics, comparing identical twins to non-identical twins, are very strong for any individual difference, including prejudice against outgroups, including anti-Semitism, for example. You can find a genetic component to it this way. So we think that we're products of our environment, and we are, but we're also products of our genetics.
Fascinating. Thank you. I will reach out to see if you'd like to work with a unique older medical population.
Yeah, please do.
Work. Thank you.
Great. Please do. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I'm seeing mostly gratitude on the chat. Well, we'll still have Anat on for the next few minutes, but I'll move forward just to some reminders as people are logging off. First, we're really happy to share that we're able to provide certificates for everyone who attended this session, and really any session what we are providing during this International Education Week webinar series. We still have one more day and 2 sessions tomorrow. I'll share in a second, so you're welcome to join. And also all the recordings are available on AFS's YouTube channel, so we will be able to review those. We'll share the link in a follow-up email to everyone who registered. And you're also going to receive not only a certificate, but a digital badge issued by Credly. We'll share with you in a follow-up email, and that's something that shows what are the topics covered in the sessions that you engaged. Then, as usual, we always want to hear from you. We have a short survey, 2-3 minutes, very quick, for you to fill in to share your feedback about today's session. Ask Claudia to pop on the chat. And again, I'll share that in a follow-up email. So if you don't have time right now, you can fill in afterwards. But we really appreciate your feedback on today's session and how we can continue to engage in these topics and offer similar free webinars and learning sessions in the future. As I mentioned, we still have 2 sessions happening this Friday as part of this International Education Week webinar series. Tomorrow, covering these topics on the screen. One will be a panel about Gen Z and global education, the transformational power of intercultural exchange. So we'll hear mostly testimonials and some case studies tackling the last topic that Anat shared. So we can see some examples of those global citizenship values and behaviors being showcased in people who are alumni of high school study abroad programs, but also through virtual exchanges. We are seeing how that can be impactful educational interventions as well to foster these behaviors. Lastly, we'll have an example. It's really from the US, but can be very relevant for others as well. How community colleges are providing access to global competence learning opportunities, and share their examples on how across different subjects, and Beth mentioned the case of healthcare providers. I know there are some schools, especially nursing schools in community college, offering learning on global competence and global citizenship topics. So for those interested, that will be the topic of that session. Finally, we also have a virtual booth. These webinars are really showcased to be about the topics and the guest speakers that we are inviting, but we also have many opportunities we offer through AFS, in AFS programs, educator resources. So if you're interested in learning more, we're having one starting in about an hour and a half. So you're invited to join that, and also feel free to follow up with us. A lot of AFS resources are available online, as for example, our framework for active global citizenship, where we share a definition of global citizenship and 28 learning outcomes that we want to foster across these 4 dimensions that we believe are relevant for global citizenship. This was an effort developed in collaboration with practitioners, scholars, researchers, and you can download for free to get some insight into that in afs.org/education. And lastly, I wanted to share with you an exciting opportunity. A lot of the group we work with in AFS are teenagers and young adults. And for young adults, we have this exciting opportunity. Every year we hold a youth assembly. It's a gathering with workshops where they can get together and really both ways, right? Develop their own global citizenship and global competences, but also think about how they can foster that in their practices. A lot of them are young social entrepreneurs, students across various areas. So you can look into on the website there, learn more about the upcoming event. Next year will be in Geneva, Switzerland. We do that in collaboration with the UN in celebration of the United Nations Youth Day. So you can look into that if you're not youth yourself, but maybe that's an opportunity for students and learners you engage with. And that's it from AFS side. If you want to learn more, please reach out to us as well. We're also eager to collaborate with other practitioners, researchers, share resources. And again, we thank very much to Anat for this fruitful collaboration and bringing this workshop to us. And also to everyone who attended. Thank you so much for taking the time. Yes, please go ahead.
Actually,
Anat.
there was a question in the chat that I'm happy to answer, if that's okay.
Of course, we have 5 minutes, so please go ahead.
Yeah, so there was a question. Ali Akbar asked if we expect that these values will continue in the next generation. Yeah, so in your opinion, will the next generations carry on these values? So what we know is when we look at in research, my own research actually, where we were able to differentiate between ages and generations, so cohorts and age, we found that the main difference in values was across generations. So will the next generations carry on these values? Maybe yes, maybe not. It will probably be a matter of the life conditions that they have. So life conditions, like I said, environment is the main effect on value change is environment. And so also on what sort of environment people grow up in. And so this is likely to show itself in the values of the next generation. So just a matter of what life conditions the next generations will be under.
We have one more question. How can education balance individual values with societal expectations?
How can education balance individual with societal expectations? Well, I think it is a balancing act, right? I mean, I talked about more important values, less important values, but of course, actually, for most people, they have values that are important to them, but not extremely, extremely important. And probably the best way is if the two merge together. And we know this from research on happiness, for example, that people who give end up being happier. So it sounds like giving is an unselfish act, but actually when people give, when they help others, they become happier too. So I think it may be just also a matter of how reward systems are generated. At the moment, high grades are important, but for example, in the UK, things like volunteering also counts now for university. There's awards that people can get for volunteering and doing other social action. And so I think a lot of it is a matter of also how the society formulates the reward system.
Wonderful. Good. Well, thank you so much, everyone. This was a great session, and we hope to see you again in other virtual AFS events, but do stay in touch. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.